Hi. Before we jump into the real bulk of what we want to get into regarding Luke chapter 2, I was just going to take a couple minutes and begin with a piece of this that is not as theologically critical, but I believe it's very important in helping us remove the story of Jesus' birth from feeling like such a fairy tale of sorts. And that is the fact that in its own context of the first century Middle East, Jesus was not born in a barn. I believe I've seen this information getting to more of the mainstream, but if you haven't heard it, I'm just going to give you the Reader's Digest condensed version. Everything I'm pulling here is essentially from a wonderful book called Jesus Through Middle Eastern Eyes by the late Kenneth E. Bailey. So to start out, I just have Logos loaded up. And I just dumped that spam caller, so I wasn't hanging up on the friend. Anyways, if you look over to the right, this is the passage that we would begin with. And in chapter 2, verse 7, most translations do still use the word in. There is no place for him in the inn. And I am seeing more translations lately that have corrected this, such as the updated version of the Holman goes to lodging place. I saw the New Living Translation used lodging as well. There's one, I can't think of what it is, that actually used the most correct way to translate this, which would be upper room. So if we start out with just the nuts and bolts of this, the word used for in is katalima. Anyways, katalima is the same word that if we go over to Luke 22, verse 11, where Jesus asks, where is the katalima, upper room, that I may eat the Passover with my disciples? This is referring to the common first century two-room home, in which the bottom part of this home, the animals would be brought in overnight for heat as well, so they weren't stolen. So there are commonly little feeding areas dug out in these where Jesus would have been laid. The issue here is that our mind immediately goes to, well, there are animals, there is animal fodder. He was born in a barn. Well, not so fast. There was no room in the upper room, which would have been the guest room. Therefore, he was born in a typical Middle Eastern lower room. He was born in the family room, where the animals would have been. There's several other cultures you could think of where, I think even to this day, where animals actually do live in the same space as people do. And if we look over to the left, the very left Bible I have open here, in the parable of the Good Samaritan, still in Luke, in chapter 10, verse 34, and he brought him to an inn and took care of him. This is the word henochion. This is the word for a commercial inn. If Luke wanted to communicate a commercial inn, he would have undoubtedly used henochion. All right. So to wrap this up, I'm just going to show you a couple little snippets from Ken Bailey's book. Besides just the language issue, Bailey lived a very good chunk of his life throughout the Middle East and Mediterranean, and he served as this wonderful bridge between us in the West and them in in South Asia and in the Middle East Mediterranean. He's a wonderful culture bridge of sorts. So anyways, so Bailey wrote, first of all, Joseph was returning to the village of his origin. In the Middle East, historical memories are long, and the extended family, with its connection to its village of origin, is important. In such a world, a man like Joseph could have appeared in Bethlehem and told people, "I am Joseph, son of," and he would have been welcome anywhere. He was royal. That is, he descended from King David. Bethlehem was famously the city of David. A descendant of David in the city of David would have been welcome anywhere. Thirdly, in every culture, women about to give birth are given special attention. Simple rural communities all over the world always assist one of their own women in childbirth, regardless of the circumstances. Are we to imagine that Bethlehem was an exception? Was there no sense of honor in Bethlehem? Surely the community would have sensed its responsibility to help Joseph find adequate shelter for Mary and provide the care she needed. To turn away a descendant of David in the city of David would have been an unspeakable shame on the entire village, and that would have been a big deal in an honor-shame-based culture. Mary had relatives in a nearby village. A few months prior to the birth of Jesus, Mary had visited her cousin Elizabeth in the hill country of Judea and was welcomed by her. Bethlehem was located in the center of Judea. By the time, therefore, that Mary and Joseph arrived in Bethlehem, they were about a short distance from the home of Zechariah and Elizabeth. If Joseph had failed to find shelter in Bethlehem, he would have naturally turned to Zechariah and Elizabeth. But did he not have time for those extra miles? It meant a lot of work. Of course not. Anyways, he's not a monster. Joseph, or incompetent. We've, over the centuries, have made him look incompetent. I think we owe Joseph an apology. Joseph had time to make adequate arrangements. Luke 2 verse 4 says that Joseph and Mary, quote, went up from Galilee to Judea, unquote. And verse 6 states, while they were there. Okay. Emphasis, while they were there. The days were accomplished that she should be delivered. The average Christian thinks that Jesus was born the same night the Holy Family arrived. Hence, Joseph's haste and willingness to accept any shelter, even the shelter of a stable. Traditional Christmas pageants reinforce this idea every year. So, in his book too, he goes much deeper into how we got this idea, and it's simply just biblical interpreters not knowing, who are so removed from this world, they simply don't know what is so obvious on the page. So once again, this is obviously not a theological make or break, but it really does help us rescue this critically important story from becoming such a fairy tale or just not believable. So now we can get on to the real bulk of what we want to talk about today.